The following is a production of Different Brains. Visit us at differentbrains.org.
In this episode of Exploring Different Brains,
we were always reprimanded for things we could not control, for parts of ourselves that we didn't understand, that we always, tried to do better, tried to fit in, tried to do more, didn't get the big picture, had parts and holes in the learning process that were never bridged, and then being shamed for it, for example. Those are usually the traumas that I see on the forefront with individuals with neurodivergency of any kind.
Hi, I'm Dr. Hackey Reitman. Welcome to another episode of Exploring Different Brains. And today we have returning to us, all the way from Missoula, Montana, we've got Megan MacKay, a great therapist who's doing so much. Thank you for being with us again, Megan.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Now, one area where you do a lot of work is in the realm of trauma.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about what you do in that arena of trauma?
Absolutely. I am an EMDR trained therapist. I am getting trained in somatic experiencing. I'm a traditionally trained therapist too, as well, coming out with your CBT, DBT, talk therapy stuff, training right out the gate from graduate school. I'm also certified in a couple of modalities that focus on developmental trauma, intimacy disorders, and relational abuse. And so with those factors combined, I can address a lot of issues for people who were affected at various stages within their life, figure out what's going on there. Like, is it an attachment thing that's affecting all of your current relationships? Is there trauma in that? Is it trauma or abuse? Because they're not the same. What kind of trauma is it? How can we solve that? How can we break through for this person to get to that resolution where they can climb over the mountain of being constantly triggered and responsive in those loops of the PTSD reaction cycle, to not have to suffer through those again? And how that works looks differently for every person.
Can you explain to us the difference between PTSD and CPTSD so that we understand the difference between these two entities?
Absolutely. Post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, is a cycle of triggered responses from somewhere where an event occurred for a person, where a horrified feeling state was frozen in a sense and stuck in the body. It's like a memory, a feeling state memory. So if you think about, what's the first time you were ever humiliated in front of people? If you thought about it and retold the story, you're probably going to express or experience the same feelings that occurred at that point in time, where you were rejected by somebody that you had immense feelings for. How did that feel? That is like those experiences with post-traumatic stress disorder times 100. And so whenever something triggers or recalls that memory, and that memory comes up, it's going to trigger that feeling state response too. So like, oh my God, I'm there. And like we say, trauma has no time. So even if it's an event that happened 30 years ago, like Vietnam veterans, for example, to this day, their brain goes all the way back to that time when the event occurred, and they go through the survival response that they took at that point in time, because it feels so real, to to try to save themselves again. In a sense, it's automatic, it's unconscious, and it's a cycle that gets stuck until you find the a point in it which you can understand and intervene in it and bring the intensity of that reaction down to close to zero.
So that's got to be something that's big in any kind of first responder, I'd imagine.
Well, big T's and little T's. With the big T traumas being the major events that are catastrophic and horrifying, like earthquakes, watching someone die in front of you, being mugged or raped. The little T events are those chronic, reoccurring ones that affect and erode a person's sense of reality and self over time, like school bullying or psychological and emotional abuse.
You know, when someone has a job that requires them to be exposed to trauma, what can they do to prevent, PTSD and sequelae such as that?
Have a trusted person to talk to. Face it, don't deny it, the reality of it or what happened, or try to stuff and compartmentalize. Know that you have feelings and it's okay to have feelings, and they're just feelings, they're not facts. And to know at the end of the day, whatever the event was, you survived it somehow. And that it already happened and you can't change it. There's no going back. But you certainly can't get through it, resolve it, and get better.
Interesting. Just feelings, not facts.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Let's talk a little bit about PTSD in the autism community. Are any of the, in your view, as a self-advocate, are any of the causes and symptoms unique to just the autistic population, or no?
I wanted to highlight, I didn't quite touch on complex PTSD, and going back for a second. Complex PTSD, meaning somebody already has a background of adverse life events, such as some sort of developmental issues that majorly impacted them growing up. And then they, let's say, go into a first responder job or go into war. That's like a 7-layer cake of trauma versus a 1-layer cake. So when you get to those individuals with neurodivergency who have grown up, like my era, throughout the traditional school system, where they had no idea what this was, because I'm an older generation, I remember the 80s. And we were always reprimanded for things we could not control, for parts of ourselves that we didn't understand, that we always, tried to do better, tried to fit in, tried to do more, didn't get the big picture, had parts and holes in the learning process that were never bridged, and then being shamed for it, for example. Those are usually the traumas that I see on the forefront with individuals with neurodivergency of any kind. It's not just limited to autism. Like ADHD, for example, sit still in your seat for 8 hours and don't do anything, while their brains are uncontrollably searching for stuff for stimulation.
Tell us about your work with first responders experiencing PTSD or CPTSD.
So, still connecting to the CPTSD part, a lot of times people with neurodivergency have some sort of PTSD by nature. You really see the two connected most of the time. Now, getting into the first responder population, it's going to be that layer cake. And so if you heard the stories of what these individuals who do these big things every day to keep us safe and keep others safe, then you would probably feel the horror that they have harbored inside for a very long time when you're talking about dealing with death or abuse cases or domestic violence, car crashes, emergency rooms. And we're not talking about just policemen, but firefighters. I consider nurses and doctors, first responders, especially if they're working in the hospital ER setting, anyone dealing with these major big events that they see, a lot of loss and grief on a daily basis. They don't quite, they're getting better at learning how to help people in those occupations, get the help that they need, but there's still a very strong need for support in those aspects. Debriefing doesn't do it. And especially if they've been doing it longer over time into the depending on the intensity of the work or the job, are they picking up body parts on a daily basis, or are they like the coroner? How intense is it? How do you get help for that? Talking about it might be more re-traumatizing. You're going to want to get further into it in terms of the subconscious and the unconscious in order to access those feeling states and find that resolution in terms of bringing that dysregulation down from an overwhelming, oh my God, shutdown feeling, like being horrified, to, okay, that is an event that happened in the past, and it was terrible, but I survived it and I'm here now, or I got to help people through it. And, it was not in my control. I was not responsible for it. Having a more rounded perspective of it, in essence.
Megan, how can people learn more about you?
I have a small business here in Hamilton, Montana. It's about an hour south of Missoula. Website is interstatehealingandrecovery.com. That's the name of my business. So you can reach out to me through the website. I have a blog, bloggingforrecovery.com, where I intermix a little bit of my journey and experiences with important mental health topics like boundaries, attachment styles, relationship stuff. So you can email or call. I'm always happy to talk about these things with people. Or I have a radio show that I host and I'm on the board for, a community radio station, 101.5 KFGM. It's Missoula's Community Radio. You can find that on 1015kfgm.org, where you can live stream it. My show is every Wednesday, 2 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. And
the name of your show?
Grizzly Talk. Thank you. Tough Talk for challenging topics. And I also have the recorded shows on YouTube for Grizzly Talk for the past episodes that I've done. So it's under Grizzly Talk, Tough Talk for challenging topics too.
And what is one thing that you wish that everyone knew about trauma?
It gets better. You can work through it.
Conquer it.
Healthfully, not drink it away.
Well, Megan, it's been a pleasure to have you here again at Different Brains. Megan MacKay, keep up your great work. Please stay in touch, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Exploring Different Brains is a production of Different Brains. Visit us at differentbrains.org.